Welcome to our series, Parenting Today, Real Life, Real People, Real Faith. I'm Mary Hassan, and I'm here with my co-host, Mikey Hill. And we're both mothers. I'm a mother of 7. Mikey is a mother of 9. And we are talking today with our guest, Dr. Ray Guarendi, about conquering the culture. Dr. Ray, we thank you for joining us. Dr. Ray is a father of 10, clinical psychologist, author, radio host, man who can do anything, as I understand. We thank you.
Fourth grade fractions champ.
Fourth grade fractions champ. That's key. That's why we brought you on.
Well, not of my whole room, just my row.
I've checked with Sister Mary Elephant, and she would like to contest that. She's not sure that really happened in 1960.
I don't know. Come on. We got to keep his credibility up here.
1984, not 1960.
Well, Dr. Ray, we were talking in our previous series, or our previous show, we were talking about conquering the culture, and we talked in a general sense about parents needing to understand what their goal is for their children. But now we want to get down to some of the specifics. How do you, as a parent, raise up virtuous, moral children?
Certainly.
Not just civilized children, as you distinguish.
One of the things that the experts hammer at parents, and you get this even, I think, sometimes from the folks who come from a religious bent, which is, well, you can't be negative. You can't just eliminate stuff. You have to be positive. You have to add stuff. You have to form. You have to shape. Yeah, you have to affirm. You better eliminate the negative first. If you don't, it will conquer you.
Okay, are we talking about negative things in the environment, or are you talking about sort of negative reinforcement? Which are you talking about here?
That which will shape your kid morally against what you want.
Okay, so those are the things that, as a parent, you look at first and you say, okay, this is going to have a negative influence on their moral development. This has got to go.
It will also negatively influence subtly their social development. Example, I was talking to a woman from our parish. She pulled up in a car. I leaned on the passenger window like this, talking to her. Her 15-year-old daughter was sitting in the passenger seat. She did not say hello to me. She did not acknowledge my presence. She never looked up at me. I carried on this conversation with Mom for a while, and I finally left. What do you think was going on that she didn't? Was she mad at me? Could she not see? What do you think it was?
Well, she clearly didn't respect you as a human.
Well, obviously, and I was
Because she
hurt.
couldn't address you. She obviously didn't know you had won the fraction award in
She
fourth
did not.
grade.
She
So
did
that
not.
a little ignorance was going on.
And probably as an old man, my bow tie with the lights on it turned her off.
Well, but in turn, though, she also didn't respect your position.
She had her headsets on.
It's a very practical.
She had her headsets on. Her mother never made her take them off. Her mother never said, excuse me, honey, there's somebody there.
Right.
Oh, hi. That's what I mean when I say it is even the little things. When we travel in the car with the kids, the only time they're allowed, and this is the older ones, to listen to anything is when it's a long trip and it's something that can occupy them. We're talking long, like several hours.
Right.
But getting in the car and going somewhere, you do not get in at all. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 16, 17, and put something in your ears, because you're not talking to Mom and Dad. You're not talking to your brothers and sisters. You are in your own little world, and the subtle moral message is, well, it's important that I have entertainment, not that I learn to interact with brothers and sisters and moms and dads.
Yeah, it's all about me.
That's what I mean about scrutinizing all of this stuff. There's nothing inherently bad about a headset.
Right.
But the situation that so many parents allow. I'll give you another one. A kid who has a boyfriend or girlfriend.
At what age?
Let's even say 17. The child is now with us on Christmas Eve. The boyfriend is here on Christmas Eve. And then she's going to go over to his parents' house on Christmas Eve. This is a relationship at 17. I see this among all my friends and family. Once the kid enters the scene with someone they like, that person jumps within 1 month on the social priority list up to number 1 or 2.
Right.
And the parents just allow it. They don't even question, wait a minute, the odds of this person not being part of her life in 6 months, 8 months, a year from now are sky high.
Well, Ray, take it even more dramatic, but the same principle. What if that person was 24, but they still only knew each other a month? I think your principle still applies even if they're of the age of meaningful, singular
Yeah,
relationships.
but you can't control that. As a
Well, you
mom.
can't control, but in the same breath, the family establishes this culture. You know, and honey, you've known her a month, or him, whatever it is, and it's Christmas Eve. But again, let's bring in the detail you brought in. Christmas Eve, that is a major family holiday.
That's different from not wanting to share your hospitality as a family. I
Right.
mean, you want your friends or your kids to bring their friends over and things, but there is a priority in the sense that some things are for family. They're meant to be times when the family gathers together and builds those relationships, even if it's something like riding in a car. You know, when you're together, just as a matter of civilization, you don't want to be rude. I mean, that's kind of the lowest level here. But beyond that, this is a time where you need to interact and you need to understand
Let me take
their
it out
concerns.
a step further. You got a 14-year-old. You're going to go visit Aunt Mary. Aunt Mary is 83 years old. She's been single for the last 21 years. Aunt Mary kind of totters out and she'll give him $1 because she still kind of has the sensibility from 20 years ago. He
Right.
doesn't want to go.
And as my son said, and she smells.
Yeah, and she's got lipstick that kind of goes up over here. He doesn't want to go. He's got places to go, people to see. There were periods of time where I did not see certain nieces and nephews of mine during their teen years because
They didn't want to show
they
up.
had other things to do.
Right.
And the parents allowed it. They basically said, well, you know, it's part of socialization. It's part of the culture. It's part of who he is. He's gone roller skating. Wait a minute. Will he learn kindness? Will he learn tolerance for folks? Will he learn to interact with an 83-year-old woman roller skating or sitting with Aunt Mary for half
Well,
an hour?
you know what though, Ray? Even all those things you're saying, those are things that benefit him as a person. I would push it a step further, or take your idea a step further in the sense that one of the most important things that kids need to learn is they are not the center of the world, and that oftentimes you do something which, as a child, you are asked to do something for which there's no recognizable benefit. But it's the right thing to do. Why? Because someone else needs your presence. You're going to make someone else happy by showing up. I don't care if you're miserable. You know, that's not the focus here. The focus is, you know, Aunt Mary, who's 83, hasn't seen her family in a month. You need to go. You need to be there. So
I came and did this show with you guys. I had many other
I have
things I
lipstick
wanted
right
to
up
do.
here.
That's exactly right. Given your advanced years,
see, there's no benefit
I
to
didn't
you,
want to come,
right?
but my mother took me to visit my Aunt Mary all those years. Now, see, it's paying off because I'm willing to sit and talk with you elderly folks.
That's a fundamental thing. I think a lot of kids today, I mean, I hate to sound like I'm a grandma myself or something, but one of the challenges in raising kids is to raise kids who will look out for what other people need, to learn how to be a self-giving person.
But let's go back to, I want to go back to our previous session, Ray, where you talked about conquering the culture and establishing the standard. To our moms at home that have 4, you know, little kids and the oldest is 8, at that point, and ideally at the delivery table with our oldest one, she's setting down her standard right then and there. So therefore, we're going back to your fundamental premise here is, Mom and Dad said, no, we're all getting in the car. And so if the kids know, okay, they're going to hold firm on this. We're not going to argue. This isn't a negotiable case. They're going to pile in the van and go. So it's no longer any anxiety for them trying to talk you out of it because you're firm.
What
We're gonna go.
would you say to someone, Mikey, who says, all you're doing is forcing the child to comply? The child doesn't want to go see Aunt Mary. The child doesn't want to go to Mass at age 15. You're forcing the child to comply. In forcing it, you're going to make them regurgitate it at some point when they're independent.
You'll regret this.
And you'll regret this. What
Right.
would you say to someone who says, if he doesn't want to do this, to visit Aunt Mary, to put down his iPod for 12 minutes to say hello to Aunt Mary, you gain nothing? What would you say?
Well, I know my response. You go first.
No, my response would be, you know, they need to go, and I'm not, if I were just simply enforcing the action, in other words, okay, you got to show up, maybe you would end up with that situation. But I think that's where you have to work with the kid's heart, and you have to tell them what their attitude needs to be.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you telling me what my attitude needs
You mean
to be.
you're my teenager?
Absolutely. I don't like
You
hearing
know what? Even if they don't like hearing
You're
it, they
making me
need to
go.
hear it.
I
I'm going to
hate
make them
going. You're
go.
making me go.
That's right. You have to go, and you know what? You have to do it.
What good could possibly come of it?
He's a tough parent. No, you're a tough teen. You know what? You have to teach them, even if you don't see the good, I'm in charge, I'm making this decision because I see what's good for you. And not only that, I see what's good for others in this situation, and you need to go. But Ray, here's the thing. I think parents need to say, it's not just about what you make your kids do. It's about what you're trying to instill in their hearts. And even if they're pushing back and giving you, angry talk or rebellious stuff, I think they need to hear what those right attitudes are. And then at some point, you hope that takes root. But too many parents they either lay out, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that. And yes, you need the authority and you got to, make sure they follow through. But I think you also need to demand a little bit more. You need to demand that they do what they're doing with the right attitude.
You ladies look like you were around. You were contemporaries of Socrates, Plato, some of those, Aristotle.
I could tell where
It's
he was
amazing
going.
what
Right?
hair color and
Yes,
makeup
that's
can
true. Do you remember the philosophy that so many centuries dominated, which essentially said you instill a habit first. From the habit will then come the disposition, the feeling, the desire. We've flipped it on its head.
Right.
Modern child rearing says if your kid doesn't want the habit and you force the habit on her, she will simply regurgitate it.
Right.
But in fact, what you're saying, Mary, is I know what is good for you. You're going to visit Aunt Mary. You're going to go to Mass. You're going to set in motion this repetition of doing good. Over time, it will settle into who you are. The other thing I always tell my clients, I say, how will he ever learn how to look at his 83-year-old aunt in the eye with kindness and engage her in conversation if you never make him visit her?
See, it's interesting. I couldn't agree with this more. These habits then become behaviors that then make up that person's character. And that's where I think then the self-esteem and the affirmation comes. It truly comes from above. I mean, these situations where all of a sudden they've lived it out, they'll get in the car and, it might be hard to say it, but, she was actually nice. I like Aunt Mary. One of the things where I guess I'd like to a little bit add to this, I think parents spend way too much time arguing in the heat of the moment. We've got, hormones and secretions that are kicking out when that kid is angry. So he's kind of not listening to your argument anyhow.
Right, that's not the time
I think
to
sometimes we've got to just
discussion.
redirect. Hey, bummer, dude.
Just got to do it.
I was at delivery. I was on the table. You weren't. I'm the mom. You're the kid.
And in your case, you're almost as old as Aunt Mary. So I think there's a certain connection. Yeah.
But the point
So
is,
they adjust.
but then we get in the car. Hey, we'll talk about it later. And then, the marriage is kind of dancing the dance here. Someone else brings up something. Dad can bring up another topic. Maybe you've got a 22-year-old that can help the situation with this resistant 15-year-old. Then later, when he realized, wow, she not only didn't smell, she didn't have any lipstick on, she was really
She gave me
interesting.
$5 instead of $1.
There's that self-interest.
I remember Aunt Elsie was my aunt, and I'd go down. I finally said, Aunt Elsie, you're paying me to clean, and I haven't lifted a finger. We've just sat here on the couch. Shh, just don't tell your mom.
Oh,
You're really here to clean. But it took me about 10 or 11 times that I thought, I'm not really cleaning. Are you okay
That's why
with
your
this?
house looks like it does.
But my point here is I think sometimes we rationalize and discuss at the moment, when that's the wrong time. You have to pick your moments, not necessarily pick your battles.
All right, you be the shrink. Why do you rationalize and discuss doing this at the moment? Why?
I think it's to make the parent feel better.
Okay, but why? Feel better about what, Mary?
Well, I think for the modern parent, your kid challenges you and you don't have the confidence or you don't have the sureness or you've lost sight of your goal. And so you got to kind of explain to yourself and to everyone around what it is that you're doing.
I want them to understand. And if they understand, they'll agree.
They'll agree,
And
right.
if they agree,
that's
then
the
it's
fallacy.
internalized. There's the fallacy.
There's the
That's
fallacy.
exactly right.
Yeah.
We're back to this whole issue of if I'm going to shape you into a moral human being that is different than the culture at large, then I have to know the paths we're going on. And for me to want you to understand all of those paths at the moment or at the time, I'll just be frustrated and I'll self-doubt. because I have to
Right.
recognize the reality that at age 13, 12, 9, you're not going to understand these paths.
Mhm.
Right.
And there's the problem, because the experts have so much hammered you with this idea that the savvy, on top of things parent has a child who says, oh, Mother,
I agree.
I've just been so blind. Yes,
Thank you.
let's sing Kumbaya.
Well, that you can reason your children into always doing the right thing. You can't.
Okay,
You
no.
know, they can't. But
Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, Ray, let's get down to some practical details. Okay, we're talking about the culture and how to conquer the culture. So you've mentioned a couple of things. Let's get rid of the negative.
Okay.
Let's, you know, you have your goal in mind. Then let's identify the negatives and let's be firm about those. What are some other concrete things that parents should look at in their own homes, in their own relationships with their kids?
There's a tendency among humans. You know, our Lord always talked about us as sheep. What a great psychological analogy, because we are. We don't think. We follow the flock. In parenting, it is all too easy to let the day-to-day movement of life go by without questioning it. You know, the boy's been sitting there for 2 hours. Now, I like Andy Griffith's show as much as the next guy, and I think that's a great little moral show. But he's been sitting there for 2 hours.
That's a problem.
Okay. Or I let him get on the computer to play a video game, and he simply shuts out the world. And here comes his little sister, and she wants to talk to him, or she wants to ask him something, or she wants to play with him, and he's just...
Right.
Think critically. Say to yourself, this is interesting. Initially, I thought this was a benign sort of activity. But what it's doing is it's taking my son and removing him from any of us. I need to rethink this.
Well, plus, Ray, isn't it building up that bad habit? In other words, every time that your son gets used to ignoring someone's request for help, he's just instilling a habit of indifference, a habit of, you know, lack of charity, whatever it is. So there can be a negative thing going on even when it looks just kind of passive.
Exactly. You know? It doesn't have to be a nasty video game. That's what I say to parents. I say, well, you know, I don't buy any of that stuff with the violence or the sexuality. I said, okay, that's a good first step. But the second step is to analyze what happens to your child when he enters that world. At the very least, are you losing time in interacting at the kitchen island?
But I hear you say, which I think has to be just
You're not allowed to say that, Mikey.
on the table.
I hear you say, that's a psychology professional phrase.
But
You're not
we're not
trained
into
to use that.
psychobabble
I
here.
am claiming my authority, and we are going to say it anyway.
All right.
But what I hear you saying, which is beautiful, is that you kept saying this sheep, instead of following the flock, she has to proactively choose to step back and think, okay, Andy Griffin, flat screen, whatever it is, you know, even just sometimes even reading a book. You know, I know a lot of homeschoolers can think, well, it's okay, he's reading. No, that's not good. This is the concept of claiming their authority, which begins with, they claim it by being motivated to think, is this where we want to go? Talk about and kind of unpack for us, what does it mean to claim your authority and even choose, okay, wait, this is my choice. I've got to say no. I've got to proactively not give him the permission to Andy Griffith to begin with, especially knowing full well his older brother just lost his job or mom just had a miscarriage. I'm going to let him watch Andy Griffith that day. Again, I think this is all tied into authority and claiming it and then putting into place.
If you're afraid to be wrong as a parent, you'll never assert the level of authority you want to assert.
That is a great point. That is a great point because, you know, I saw a stat somewhere once that good parents make like 7 mistakes a day, and that
I'm a brilliant parent.
you must be. Now, who
You've never
knows?
made any,
Who
I
knows
heard.
if that's true? But the point is, people are so afraid that they're going to make a mistake, and they're afraid that their kids are going to catch them in a mistake or point that out. Well, so what? You make the best judgment you can.
I tell parents, much of what you decide to do regarding their welfare is right simply because you say so.
Right.
If you say, I don't want him having a $12 a week allowance, I want him having a $2 a week allowance, then that's right because you determined it for your home.
That
Right.
confidence in their authority.
Yes, this idea that I've got to live up to this standard and these standards are out there somewhere regarding my particular parenthood is nonsense.
Mhm.
If someone says to me, Ray, I can't believe it. Your daughter, Sarah, she's a cute little girl and you're not letting her date till she's 18. I can't believe you're doing that. I think that's just way too off the charts. I said, well, it's fine.
You can think
I'm the
that.
dad. I can do what I want.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of the things we did. Christmas time, we always told the kids, it's not your birthday, which means basically this isn't a time
This
for you to
isn't
get
about you.
27 things.
Right.
And routinely, when the kids were growing up, we gave away, either to Children's Hospital, about 80 to 90% of their gifts.
Mm.
The new gifts that they just
Yes,
opened.
yes, the new gifts.
Hmm.
Because we couldn't stop the relatives. We couldn't stop
Right.
the friends. And it just, the Toys R Us truck came in for 4 days in a row dropping stuff off.
So this rule or this habit came after the gifts came, and you said, okay, this was motivated by dejunking initially.
It was motivated by it was too much.
Too
That's-
much for the
so I mean,
kids. Too much for their.
Well, that self-centeredness that
Mhm.
we're talking about, not wanting to
So
breed.
the principle motivated. you.
Principle was. Now, nobody agreed with me. Nobody. There was no one. My brother. My brother said, hey, Ray, it's your family. You can do what you want. But across the board, people just looked at you and said, what are you doing?
Or were they mad because the gift they had bought you
That's
then got
part
rid
of it. They got rid of their gift. Part of it was, my gosh, how could you be so cruel to these kids? This is something they would want to play with. Let them play with it for a week and give it away, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line was, my wife is mom.
Mhm.
I am dad.
I'm the dad. Yeah.
We made the decision for
Mhm.
our family. And if you have that attitude, the people watching us are not people who are going to go, yeah, that's right. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to feed him for 4 or 5 days. And I'm going to beat his little bottom every time he blows his nose wrong. No, that's not the kind of folks who watch a show like this.
Mm-hmm.
People who watch a show like this are trying hard to be better people, better parents.
Better parents.
Plus, we're not talking at the level of moral imperatives of
No,
what you
we're
need to
talking
do.
about
We're
your
talking about
preferences in your family
things that
for
are
how
neutral
you
in
want
one
it to
sense.
run.
Mhm.
Practically.
Practically, if a dad or mom says, we have a 5-minute phone limit
Mhm.
for our teenagers, that's it. Any phone call is 5 minutes. There are probably the majority of people who would say, well, gosh, come on. I mean, they got friends, they got people they want to talk to.
Mhm,
Sometimes it takes
mhm.
longer. Okay, that case could be made. And in your home, you can do that. But in this home, it's a 5-minute limit. Why? Because for whatever the reason, mom and dad want that.
Okay, Ray, let's help our audience and our friends. Okay, that's great. I don't have your personality. I'm meek, I'm quiet, I'm a wallflower, I sit back. I mean, you walk into the room, you can command, you're E.F. Hutton himself. That's just not me. I'm not that kind of parent. How do we make this universal understanding that all 4 temperaments have to claim their authority as parents?
You want a quick answer in 54 seconds? Or do you want to wrap up and we'll take that and have people listen to us when we come back?
Let's make this our next session.
Okay.
We've been talking here with Ray Guarendi and Mary Hassan, my Mikey Hill. Our parenting series is Real Life, Real People, Real Faith. Please stay tuned for our next exciting session with our math division champ himself, Dr.
Not
Ray
math
Guarendi.
division.
Fractions.
Fraction,
Mary
excuse.
Margaret was
Well,
champion
there's-
of the whole room. I was the row. I was the only boy champion of a row.
You were the only boy in that girls' school, remember?
I was.
This was the research
And I was
idea.
17 and I paid my part of the tuition just to get to be there.
Just to get in there with those girls.
But we thank you for being with us, Dr. Ray.
It's a delight, ladies. I will look forward to the next time we get together.